everybody. Welcome to our Counterpoise podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Samantha Adams, and I'm joined by my other two co-hosts. Just gonna dive right in. Guys, you want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Malik Foster, co-host for the Counterpoise podcast.
And I'm Everett Stevenson, one of your other third co-hosts as well for this show. And today we have an interesting topic. This is one where we look into the diaspora of each other and see what the relationship is between, African or Native Black Americans to America and the relationship with Africans that are either in this country or, just Africans in general. And the relationship between the two. Well, we had a few clips that we want to go ahead and show and talk about. Also, a few items that had occurred in the media that we wanted to discuss with you as well as we look at this relationship and how it has developed over the years. Something that initially I think coming up, we never really thought would be something that we would necessarily have to discuss, but unfortunately, I guess like being, the ADOS or a member of Black America, however you describe yourself, it's just something that has to be addressed because of the fact that we're noticing that there's been disparity in the ways that Black Americans are viewed amongst Africans, and this is something that we wanted to talk about today.
Right. So what brought about this conversation, as Everett, my co-host, alluded to, was a situation that happened with a former Pace University employee, a professor, if I'm saying that correctly. He used to work there. He hasn't worked there in 3 years, according to Pace University. So let me just read off the tweet. Hopefully, our editor Marv, he can post a screenshot of that so people can see. But basically, this Nigerian American or Nigerian, I don't know if he's American, but he's definitely in the U.S. and is employed in the U.S. He wrote, "I hate that the Klan didn't lynch this piece of shit's ancestors," in reference to Clarence Thomas being a Black American, foundational Black American. He said, "What a useless fucking group." So that's what triggered this conversation of why do we really think that there is some sort of friction, or why is there hate amongst Africans, African immigrants towards American Descendants of Slaves or foundational Black Americans. So that's very interesting. There is an update. He has since apologized because there was a lot of people that were calling Pace University, telling Pace University, "Hey, you got to disown this individual. You shouldn't be associated with this individual." And the reason why people were doing that, because he said he wasn't going to take down the tweet, he wasn't going to apologize, he wasn't going to do anything. He's going to leave it up there. But now he's apologized, said he was trolling, but in all seriousness, he didn't mean that, and he was basically walking back his comments. So that's essentially what happened and what triggered this conversation. Sam, do you want to say anything about what triggered this?
Well, I want to talk about the basis of it all. Like, I know a couple months ago we had the book of the month, which was it was a Black Civilization. It was a Chancellor Williams book. It was a book that I advertised, and in that book, it addresses the division amongst Black people. So, back in the day, when I say back in the day, I mean way back in the day, right? Before slavery, back when Africa had dynasties, the dynasties were impenetrable for one reason, for one main reason, not one sole reason, but one main reason. And the main reason was because Black folks were unified. And so once Africa was infiltrated and division was created, Black people have struggled ever since. And a lot of that has to do with the um the division. And our division comes from telling each other bad things about one another. And you just see it continue to happen throughout history, right? Then once we start with the infighting, then you have Africans who sell other Africans to America and trade them. Boom, now you got slavery. Then you have the propaganda, which we'll get into later. You know what I'm saying? Where you have, um, Black people looking at Africans one way and Africans looking at Black people another way because of the propaganda that has been put out there for us to look at and just continue to accept as truth when it's not actually truth. Where they look at African Americans as being a bunch of coons and robbers and just bad people, and they show Africans as being a bunch of savages, and neither is true, right? Not for the majority. I mean, granted, there are people that do live in African villages and live a traditional lifestyle, but it doesn't mean that that's all of Africa, and it doesn't make any of them, whether they choose to live in villages and huts and stuff, any less um, important or any less of a person than it would for those who live in industrial Africa. Just like when you look at what happens in the news, you see a bunch of Black people committing crimes. It doesn't mean that all Black folks commit crimes. Matter of fact, majority don't. Majority work. A majority, are upstanding members of society that contribute to the growth of America. And it's the reason why America is where it is right now, because it was grown on the backs of Black people. The Black people from this country, especially American descendants of slaves and slaves, the enslaved themselves. So, I just wanted to make sure I said that because a lot of times, a lot of that discourse comes from propaganda. And I think that it's sad because, we do have to find ways to grow together because there's no way that we're always going to remain at the bottom if we're always fighting each other.
Well, absolutely. I just wanted to touch on something real quick as far as the tweet and my thoughts on that in particular. I definitely think that some of it comes, but I think when we look at this, I'm gonna get to one point. You talked about the divisionism and the separation that has occurred, and I think that I'll speak to that a little bit more later. But in regards to the mindset and the media's role in the propaganda, I think a lot of that comes because a lot of times what I come to realize is um people don't necessarily understand the after effects, like the things that had to come, that had to be accomplished in order for African Americans, or for this conversation, I'm gonna say African Americans, meaning people that are native to African or to America. Um, but African Americans had to overcome in order to have like the civil rights, to be able to have other things such as, like you say, we talk about all the time, redlining, mandatory minimums, things that the crack epidemic and being planted into the communities that were faced by the individuals who were from this country, that would make them come across as seeming as lazy or not taking advantage of the opportunities. And I think that's a little bit due to the fact that, again, that history isn't always taught. And that's something that we see a lot of times that may be getting looked over. You know what I mean? We talk about it from the most basic of rules when they look at the image of Christ and you see how, he looks, as opposed to when, you look at how most Israelites look. And so that's just some of the basis of how, again, like they say, he who the victor gets to tell their history and tell how things are done. And in this world, we've noticed that a lot of times that we don't get to tell our stories. We don't get to have, control of the narrative that we have. And I think that kind of blinds a lot of people to understanding the beauty of, one, the race, and then two, just how strong you are as an individual to endure all of the things that you had to endure. You're not lazy. You just don't know who you are. You know what I'm saying? You're just lost in a sense. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. And to play devil's advocate, I could almost understand it for a person that's coming into the world currently to say modern day, well, look at all of the opportunities that you have in this country. I think that's how a lot of people look at it. Like, you can go to school for free. You know what I'm saying? Then if you take school serious, you can get an opportunity to get a scholarship and then go forward. Those things may not cost you. But I think that, again, that's an understanding of thinking that you have a home that's functional. Maybe you have a place to lay your head down at night, that you're not dealing with certain things. You have food that you can go home to eat, every day. So you maybe not be starving. You have clothes on your back or things that you don't have to necessarily be taken care of that will allow you to just focus on school. Just do
Everett,
what you
I
have
was
to do.
going to say that some of those opportunities are very misleading. I know that a lot of immigrants will say, "Oh, well, you have your opportunities," but okay, every time there's opportunity, we're last on the list with everything, even with affirmative action, all these plans and benefits that are specifically supposed to be for us, but they include all these other minority groups and immigrants that get treated with more priority over us, which should not be the case. We should be treated as a priority over them because they were designed specifically to benefit us due to the historical incidents that took place in this country. But I'll let you continue. Go ahead.
Oh no, and that's absolutely correct. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, no, having an understanding and appreciation of that would then, I think, lend to you understanding exactly why it's such a tragedy. It's not just this many people on any race that's just lazy. You know what I'm saying? This is not, but there may be a fact that there's a lot of things that's in play that would make it
Because
seem
we can
like
say the same thing to them too. Like, why? Well, you're the majority. You're a majority in your country. Why do you need to seek opportunities in a country where we come from, where our people historically built up this country, and this country wouldn't be where it is today without foundational Black Americans. So that's a point, an argument that can be on the other side. But go ahead.
The other thing, hold on real quick. The other thing is the whole thing about being lazy. I don't know how, whether I do know where it came from, right? But it bothers me when people say Black folks are lazy, Black Americans specifically, because we built this country and we're still building it, right? So it's like, it's aggravating. It's like, how when you have a school project and you work your behind off and you do your best and they're like, well, that's, you could have did. It's like, I could have did. Do you know what I did? I went so hard, I worked really hard, and it's like, we're just so completely unappreciated in this country. And it's incredibly frustrating, especially when you're talking about with our relationships with other people. But go ahead, Ian. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh no, 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 no. You guys are hitting it right on the nose, and I think I wanted to also bring it back to the point that you were talking about in particular, like without bringing, jumping too far along, but as far as culture, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why, if anything, I think that's what we should be called out on. And I know, like, because of it spurs so much more from, so many more things spur from that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's always, so a lot of times I think within our community, we kind of pull back and look to certain, like, African quotes, if you will, or montage, like, it takes a village. You know what I'm saying? And we know, like, that means it takes a village to raise a child, but we also know that it also takes a village and also as well to sustain a community, right? Like, we need everybody to be working together. And I think that's one thing that, if we were to be honest about being called out upon, I think that should be what we should be called out on, is not being able to really look and want to spend with our brother, not really wanting to work and invest in someone else. And I get this too, because again, we need to make sure that the customer service, the things that we get in this is on point, the product is good, and that people take pride in the work that they have. But it's something that, I think, and that's tough, because I think, like, if we really look at that statement of that statement, when did all of that end? Plessy versus Ferguson. You know what I'm saying? Like that was right around that time where now you don't have to go to a black doctor. You don't have to go to a black mechanic. You don't have to go to a black grocery store. You can go to the supermarket up the street or whatever the case may be now and shop. And I think that kind of killed that unity that we have, and I still think that's why
But it
Dr.
didn't
King
because
said, like, I'm leading my people into a burning house now, because he realized now that if you give people, like I said, if you give oppressed people an opportunity to get, to live freedom, or to seem like they have freedom, what are they going to do? They're going to buy items of freedom, right? So they're going to look to do the thing
right.
you think looks like
But I got to
America.
get a little bit of pushback on that because although, it kind of broke away from the camaraderie amongst Black folks in America when you're talking about Plessy versus Ferguson and stuff like that. The issue that also, the other side of that is the fact that things were not equal, right? So, like, you had hospitals that didn't have the same type of um, assistance. Like, you may have had doctors that were incredibly smart and educated and things like that, but they may not have had the same resources and supplies. You may have had grocery stores, but they may have been lacking in some of the food. You know what I mean? Even now, when you look at that, when you go to the hood, you can't find good quality food like that. You got to go out, and that's even if there's a grocery store in the hood. Most hoods, you got to go out somewhere to go get food. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that, that is an important thing to recognize. Like when you're talking about the separation, yeah, you absolutely need that camaraderie and the community growth. But at the same time, it's got to be equal. I should be able to go to my neighborhood grocery store if it's Black owned and go have the same type of service, that I would have at a white one. For example, I'm gonna give you guys complete transparency, right? I was looking for a tattoo shop, right? Because I want to get another tattoo. And I wanted to go to a Black owned tattoo shop, right? But when I'm looking at the tattoos, I'm not sure if I really like them. And it's like, is it that particular tattoo shop? Is it their supplies? What's going on there? I want to support them, but at the same time, when I'm looking at this white owned one, their tattoos look better. Is it maybe just the pictures? What is it? You know what I'm saying? But and so I'm sitting there stuck. Like, do I go support my Black owned company or do I go here? Because the tattoo is forever. And so I thought about it and I said, you know what I need to do? I need to go into the store. I haven't gone in yet, because I don't know if y'all can tell I'm under the weather for our viewers. But when I go in, because that's what I want to do. I want to support my Black business that much where I'm willing to have the mark on my body forever and leave that mark forever, and support them as opposed to just saying, "Oh, I like their pictures." Because what if I go to the other place? It's not Black owned, and I don't like the work, even though their pictures look great. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that Black people, even though they may not, customer service may not always be great and stuff like that. You can watch that episode. We've definitely talked about that before. It's not
Yeah.
true for all Black owned business, but there are some that their customer service ain't that great. So I may run into that problem, right? But I still poured money back into my community. And so even though we're still trying to develop a community, right? And so I think that it's important to recognize that. And it's about unifying who we are. And we can't uplift. Like if I go somewhere and the service is not bad, I mean the service is bad, I'm not gonna fight with the people. Instead, what I'm going to do is try to teach them. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that it's important for us to recognize that that's part of building people up. If people have never had the experience where they've been taught how to grow each other, don't yell at them because they don't know. Show them. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a part of
Are you
building.
saying that the customer service point that you're making is a way that possibly immigrants, even specifically African immigrants, can have a like slight against us? Like, hey, this is why a reason, right? A reason for saying that we're lazy. Like I think E had mentioned. Do you think that's why?
I
Possible.
think more the laziness about from other people, immigrants. Like I don't care if they're from Africa or from other countries. I think it really comes from propaganda, and coming from a place where white people are at the top of the totem pole, right? No matter if they're racist, not racist, whatever. That's just the bottom line. The fact is what it is, right? And if you're trying to gain some level of some semblance of power, right? You want to try to emulate what's on the top because that's how you figure that's the formula that got them there. So when you're looking at that, you if at what's at the top tears down what's at the bottom to keep them there, then you're gonna jump in line and do it too. And it's part of the propaganda, right? When you look on TV and you see Africans on TV, a lot of times you don't see beautiful industrialized Africa. Um, you don't see all of those things. Instead, you might see the kid with the fly in the eye, or some deprived um, country or community in Africa where people don't have water or things like that. They're starving or they got malaria and they need help. Like you see that. You know what I'm saying? You don't see the people that are flourishing. You don't see that they live in these big old houses and they have these big industrial places to live, these big industrial cities, and people out there making money and living their lives. And you don't get to see all of the beauty in the country. But just like with us, when you look at TV and you look at Black TV shows, right? A majority of Black TV shows are what? Comedies. You don't see dramas. You don't see anything else.
I would
All you see
argue
is
that they are dramas though. I don't mean to jump off because I feel like again another thing that's shown a lot of times from Black people is struggle, strife. You
that's
know,
not well. I mean, when you do, that's all you see is, oh, my baby daddy left me, or it's ratchet shit on television. Excuse my language, or it's comedy where people are shucking and jiving like a Sambo. And the truth of the matter is that's not a majority of Black folks. A majority of Black people in America do not live like that. Do we like a good laugh? Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? Are there people out here struggling in those same ways? Yes. Are people living a ratchet lifestyle? Absolutely. But that ain't everybody. A majority of people don't live like that. You know what I'm saying? A majority of people are doing things that, if you put it on a TV show, probably be boring. But they're making their money, they're living their life, and they're doing what they got to do for their families. And I think that when you're looking at they take the saddest, I'm not going to say the worst, but the saddest aspects of Black folks, both in Africa and out here in America, and they show it to each other. And so, because there's no baseline, they don't have any context for it, they don't understand what's really going on because they don't come over here and we don't go over there. I mean, we do, but we don't. Like, as a whole, we don't. So we don't know. So all we ever get to see is what's on television. And then when we take that propaganda, we start to develop our own prejudgments about what's going on and who you're dealing with. And then, when you have Africans, such as this Nigerian ex-professor from Pace, come over here, he's got this I'm better than you type attitude. You know what I'm saying? So I know that the comedian Godfrey was on Vlad TV. Godfrey is a Nigerian American. He was born in Nebraska, but he's first generation American. His family is from Nigeria, and he touches on that on Vlad TV. We have a clip, but it's based off of a clip from Freeway. What's his first name?
Freeway.
Freeway Rick. Right, Rick Ross. Yeah. So it starts off there. So we're gonna show portions of the clip right now, and just y'all take what y'all want from it.
Right.
That's a word that they were calling the American blacks,
Duck
Akata,
here.
the Nigerians. Akata is a word that they
Yeah.
use for American blacks. And Wesley Snipes was like, yo, what is this Akata shit you keep calling us? And the guy goes, we don't want to work with cotton pickers. And then Wesley beats the shit out of them. But it's the
Oh,
truth.
I
So
think that
African
right there,
Americans and
right when
African
we were talking about that, it was like kind of giving reference to, again, the mentality that I think, some Africans have about, Americans. And I don't necessarily want to make this seem like this is even just like an African thing. I think this is something that we can open the diaspora to, saying that it can be even Caribbean islands and Caribbean individuals who may come over into this country that will have a viewpoint of, African Americans. And I think that's why I said like it's a conversation for the diaspora, even though we're referencing Africans indirectly. It's not solely an African issue. I think it's something that you can also find in the Haitian community as well. I think it's something you can find in the Jamaican community as well. I think it's something that you may also find in other Caribbean islands, or islanders who may come into the country. And part of me also wonders about that, because it's like, why do so many, like, why is it that we all feel like we have to make this distinction as to, you know what I'm saying, trying to separate themselves from whatever it is. And is wild to me, because I think no matter what, I feel like society will show you that it don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. It don't matter if you was African over in Ukraine and you were getting an education and you thought that, you were going to be, treated as a citizen. You see that. You see when, it don't matter if rest in peace. You're eating ice cream in your apartment in Texas. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter any of the times, you know what I mean, whether you getting pulled over by an officer. um a lot of times you'll see in the grand scheme of things that it doesn't. I think, while there is some times where, you may be applying for opportunity, company may look at you and be able to fill that quota, and in that situation may work and help itself out, sure. But on a grand scheme though, I don't necessarily think that it's gonna save you from being subject just to the same things that, African Americans are subject to.
I
Yeah.
think that our struggles are different. I'm sorry, Malik, I'm going to say this real quick. I think our struggles are different, right? Like our, in Africa, Africans were colonized. Africa was colonized, after they sold blacks into slavery. When you talk about what happened to the blacks in Jamaica and Haiti, where they got their own independence, especially Haiti, once they got their own independence, they still struggle. Excuse Chino, he hears something outside. But they still struggle, right, with corruption and all other kinds of things. Why? Because people are not building each other up. Instead, they're kind of doing things that are kind of selfish and just for themselves. And so, when you're dealing with that type of corruption and stuff like that, you're not flourishing. So when they look at America and they see, oh, it's this land of opportunity, Black people are doing better. It's like, no, we ain't. You know what I'm saying? Like, you think we are, but we're not. It just looks better, with us. We just know how to, it's like, sometimes you don't know whether or not somebody's broke or they got money because they know how to dress. Just because you know how to dress don't mean that they rich. And so, like, our struggles, the things that he was alluding to earlier, or talking about even earlier, is that we've had our own struggles, and a lot of times people don't recognize the fight that we've had to put up over hundreds of years in order to even get where we are today. And it doesn't necessarily mean we don't appreciate the things that we've worked for and we've earned, not what was given to us, but what we've worked for and what we've earned. It's just very frustrating because we're still working and fighting for things that we shouldn't have to work and fight for. Like, we shouldn't have to work and fight to be treated like people anywhere in the world.
Right. And whenever you made a good point about opportunity, and they'll call us names like Akata whatever, cotton pickers, whatever, lazy, all these names, right? But they're getting things confused, right? It's very misleading what they're saying. They're fleeing their country to come over to the U.S., since we're talking about the United States specifically, to achieve their own personal economic benefit and ignoring the plight of the issues that are going on with foundational Black Americans here. And they're ignoring all the atrocities that the government, the dominant white society, white supremacy is doing towards Black Americans here in this country. Not all white people, but the white supremacists, right? And people that own and control the stuff that are being blatantly racist through corporations and all of this stuff. So just because they can have a token position and not really own and control anything, getting a high paying job or a good wage doesn't mean anything. You have coons that can get that, so they're not really doing much. They don't come here to change anything. And when they get here, it's not like they make any differences in their countries, because when you go there, you still see similar conditions. So I think, it's very misleading when they say those kind of statements, as opposed to Black people. They actually developed Black Wall Streets that had to be burned down, in communities in Philadelphia, Florida, North Carolina, all these kind of communities all throughout the country, right? So that's some of the issues. And Black people didn't flee. They didn't flee. They just migrated to different places in the United States for opportunity. So they didn't just leave the U.S. because they were getting oppressed by the government.
Let me say, like, I have to also reference again, like you said, you got Detroit was another one, California was another one when they had to go rush. So there's different times and different reasons in which a lot of times people have left. And I say Detroit because of how that was right around the time of the industrial period where people were coming out for the plants and everything. But yeah, we can go on. So
all right,
part
I'm
of that.
gonna play a little bit more of the clip here.
Cool.
Africans have always had friction, you understand? But Africans, and I know some Africans are gonna probably be like, I don't like what you, man, whatever.
People were upset over this clip. This clip started
Why?
to go viral on Twitter.
Why are they getting upset at that? First of all, it's the truth. Africans come to America, and there's a lot of my African American friends say, man, a lot of Africans are really mean towards us. They're really nasty towards us because they feel they're better towards us. And I think it's the wrong attitude to take, because I'm West African, but I was born here. My friends are African American and African. I think it's fucked up, because here's the thing. Africa, like whether you say Nigerians or Ethiopians, whatever, we were colonized by Europeans, man. We were colonized. We were treated like shit. Look at South Africa. With all the Dutch, they've shit on South Africans, man. And finally, I think South Africans, with the help of Julius Malema and all these, they're trying to take some of their shit back. Dutch people are fucked up towards fucking Black Africans. And the fact that a South African.
So I think he touched on a lot of points, right? That there is a lot of friction between Black Americans, African Americans, and Africans that come over here. And he's right about that. And he pointed out a lot of differences about different countries that have been colonized by colonizers, and that they've done pretty messed up stuff too. So their disparaging comments and things of that nature aren't even warranted, and they're not valid, and they go without any reason except the fact that they're feeding into the white propaganda and feeding into the stereotypes of things. Of course, are Black Americans perfect? No, but by no means do Black Americans try to go after any specific group and say one specific group is like this, unless they've had encounters and dealings with such a group. And usually that group is doing some ill will towards Black Americans as a group, because they're feeding into the white supremacist talking points and propaganda and other negative news. And you guys can jump in here.
Yeah, I was gonna actually say, a good example of that, it doesn't necessarily always have to be Africans versus, Black Americans or African Americans, but also too with other groups like Asians, right? There's a whole, not all Asians are like this. Okay, let's just be clear. I want to make sure I preface that. Well, whenever we're talking about a group, we're not talking about everybody in that group. But Black people have had experiences where there have been Asians in their community or in their neighborhoods, rather, who have stores and stuff like that, who treat them bad, right? It's not true for all, but it is true for some. Like you get the people that go into the liquor store that might be owned by, I don't know, a Korean family or something, and they're following them around the store, telling them to hurry up and buy because they think they're gonna steal, right? That comes from propaganda from the TV and from the news, right? Because why? The news only shows you bad stuff. It only shows you negative things. So people believe the things that they see on the news about everybody. If I watch kung fu flicks, I'm out of pocket if I think that all Asian people know how to do kung fu, or I think somebody from Samoa, like some Samoan person, is able to do as a samurai. Like those are two totally different cultures. You see what I'm saying? Like and it's honestly it's ignorant, and people really like, I'm not saying people shouldn't be careful about the safety in their establishments and things like that, but don't treat everybody like they're a criminal, because Black folks,
Yeah.
for a majority, ain't criminals.
Or I also think that too, when you look at the criminality, why do you think somebody need to steal a bag of chips? If you feel what I mean, I can guarantee you, as a person who can understand what it feels like to not have to necessarily maybe have to want for something at times, and to know how it feels to want for things at different times, you know what I'm saying? You don't necessarily a lot of times commit certain atrocities and want to look to do bad because that's just what you want to do. Generally, most people don't do that. You know what I'm saying? It's most of the time because maybe they're in a situation in which they don't have the type of things that they need. And again, we all understand that some of that may be, more of on a family level of situation and decisions that's being made. But some people are having to learn and to grow up as, you know what I'm saying, the parent and the child. You know what I mean? They have to parent themselves for whatever reasons. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of times it's more so like, it should be things that should be looked at towards working with it. Like and so I won't sit here and say that, are we dead wrong for thinking that, crime doesn't happen, or like, oh, that every person does it. Like I understand that people are going to always have that disposition with us. But I do feel like it's the question should be more so, instead of looking to see what somebody about to do, to be considering yourself to see maybe if when I give them a position, can they come sweep this little floor up every so often, and then they can get them a little couple dollars to get them something here and there, whatever, or before they go to school. Like finding opportunities and ways that you can teach and also develop, I think makes for more of a stronger emphasis of allowing you to be able to make a bigger impact, but also, change your perspective of also that person, because it's going to tell you one thing or another. It's going to tell you if that person's willing to work for what they want in life, and if a person's willing to do that, a lot of times then they may be able to get to the next level by working a little bit harder or putting in more time to get the things that they want. Or you're going to know then if it's just you got somebody that, they just not prone to trying to change their situation, even when granted an opportunity to do such. So yeah, that's just how I look at how the situations like that should be handled. But I agree too that a lot of this is also programmed by some of the things that, like you said, people at the top, rhetoric that's been stated by white supremacists or individuals who make these bold-faced assertions and don't actually have interactions with a lot of black Americans in particular, because most of the friends that I've had all are, and I could say generally a lot of them are all in real good situation. I'm saying doing well for themselves, doing well for their family, you know, putting on, making sure that they, you know, are living a good life and are, you know, thriving and flourishing. So it's not, and that's another frustrating thing about it, because you would think that you walking in like a twilight zone, right? Like the things that you know as a person and things that you see as an individual, you know it's not be true, but everything around you tries to tell you that it is. And so, like, you know, it makes it a little bit of a challenge. But I think at the same time, you also understand that there is some element to that statement. So, you know, I think that's another reason why some people just kind of go what they go. But I think it's so bad where you can go outside and, you know, a lot of times because people don't know, they won't even speak. You know what I'm saying? Within the community, just, hey, how you doing, bro? You know, what's going on? How you doing? Look each other in the face just to say, hey, what's up? That's something that we don't see a lot of. And I think a lot of that could change is if we could look at each other and see more of, you know, the commonality, as opposed to looking at it and just thinking, oh, here come another, you know, person of color, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. I was gonna say, yeah, like they, they'll always come at us about the culture, right? And Black Americans are, you know, our culture is recognized around the world, and people try to emulate that. Or people try to do that with African culture or Hispanic culture or what? I know everything's are being more globalized nowadays, but I mean, for the longest time, it's been Black Americans have been leading as far as the culture, the swag, you know, the styles and stuff like that. So when they come at us from a culture's perspective, I think that's even misleading itself too. I think what they're coming at is more of a Western perspective of our dysfunctional family situation, which is is basically a microcosm, even though we got it the worst of all American families right now. But of course, we got it the worst because we're worse than everything. Um, that tends to be the trend. So it's not just, you know, us that have the single parent, baby daddy, baby mama issues, but it's just our issues are highlighted because we got it at the worst rate. So I think that's one thing to point out. And then as far as education goes, just because, you know, they come over here with some sort of education and stuff like that doesn't give people the right to you know, disparage us, have disparaging comments. That's
It doesn't
really
make anybody
some
better
comments
than
I
us.
wanted to say. What did you say?
I was gonna say it doesn't make anybody better than us either, right? Like, yeah,
Okay.
very
Yeah.
loyal. Okay, that's great. But if you take away the extra education, the law school education, the undergrad education, it doesn't change who we are at our core, right? We're still individuals who use our good common sense and our logic, period. There's plenty of people that are out there that may not necessarily have gone to college or have gone to college and haven't completed it, only did like 2 years, and still are very smart. You see what I'm saying? You got to have some level of intelligence and intellect in order to build a country and to sustain it, right? So even though we're at the bottom of the totem pole in a lot of
Or to
categories,
get white supremacists to invite more blacks to come over or allow more blacks to come over. I mean, we convinced the US government to actually allow that to happen.
right, we do, but then, but then we
And it's,
don't at the same time, right? You say, okay, it's okay for more Africans to
I mean,
come,
it's limited, but they're still allowed to come here.
but check it out though. But then when you're talking about like people fleeing from their countries, right? If you take somebody that hops in a boat and comes over from Haiti versus somebody that hops in a boat and comes over from Cuba, they're gonna send that person from Haiti right back. You like they never got here. But the person from Cuba might be able to sit here and stay. And they both could be fleeing from something similar. You see what I'm saying? Now, granted, we don't have the same relationship
I
with the
mean,
Haitian that we.
Haiti's a special case. You know, they always get the hate. But go ahead, Sam.
But why though? You see what I'm saying? We
Um,
have we have a tense relationship with Cuba. We don't have a super tense relationship with Haiti. right? And
Mhm.
so when you look at the makeup of the Haitian community versus, like, I remember back in the day, there was a little boy named Elian Gonzalez. He came over here illegally. Something happened. I don't remember what it was, but they went in
Staying
there
with
with
his
the,
grandparents
yeah, he came over here on a boat, but
to
like I think his mom or
Disney.
his uncle or somebody who was with him died or whatever in the water. He got here, he was staying there. They went there with the guns out and all that to get that little boy out the house and send him back to Cuba. But at the same time, there was a little Haitian kid that came over on a floaty and they send him right back. You didn't hear nothing about it. They did it quietly, turned him around. Just like when it was all those people that came over, was it from Haiti? Or was it earlier in the year or late last year? And when they got down there, everybody was gone. They had already turned around and sent them back. And so it's like, you hear about these things, but this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Like, yeah, they say, oh, yeah, y'all can come over here. But then, nope, but we can go ahead and let a billion Ukrainians come over and keep sending money over to Ukraine. But, Africans here, we can't even get a friggin' George Floyd bill passed, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I was gonna say, to respond to you is like I think they're doing all those type of things just to destabilize um, Black Americans, foundational Americans. It's just everything, like from even the selection of the type of Africans that can come over here, right? It may not be the Pan Africanists. It may not be the ones who are down for our cause. It's those elitists or the people who are basically coons to kind of destabilize us to not have us on code, right? I don't want to use the word unified, but having us all on code because every individual in their individual lives can be on code and that helps, right? But unify, using the term unify, that's hard to put because not every other groups, all their groups of people are unified, but they get on code. So I think that's a distinction that I wanted to make on there. You got any other thoughts or comments you want to say, E, before we get into some of our final thoughts and wrap ups?
Oh no, I'll just go ahead and let you guys go real quick, and then I'll wrap up after that.
Yes, I'll go ahead and give my final thoughts. I think that the goal is community, right? And unification. And we don't have it. We're working on it, but we don't really have it. And I think that we're better than what we used to be. But I think that people often forget that America is a little bit further along in this walk, right? In this growth walk. And the reason why we're a little bit further along is because we've been going through this fight longer as far as fighting white supremacy, fighting oppression, fighting these things. And I think that at some point, a couple years ago, I don't know if it was with Obama's presidency, I don't know if it was when Black Panther came out, I don't know what it was, but it was around that time frame. Black people started realizing we have to start supporting each other. I believe that has been the case in the past, but then every time we get to a certain level, white supremacy steps in and tears it down, and we're back to starting from scratch and being crabs in a barrel. So I think that recognizing that crabs in a barrel syndrome and not allowing, regardless of whatever happens, we can't allow those things to continue to keep us divided and continue to build as a community. And so that way, when other people come in, whether they be Blacks from Africa, Blacks from Europe, Blacks from the Caribbean, wherever, they can come in and contribute as opposed to come in and separate. Because although we may have had different struggles, whether it's cultural, economic, education, whether there's a factor of jealousy that's even thrown in there, whatever the reason is, at the end of the day, the goal is to unify and to grow. Now, does that mean we're trying to be a superpower? I don't think so. I think it's just that right now we're just trying to get our bite at the pie and just live our lives and just flourish as best we can. For some people, it may be to be a superpower, but for others, it might be, look, I'm just trying to live my life and do my thing, have peace and live happily ever after, right? And nothing is going to be perfect. There's always going to be a fight. There's always going to be some sort of struggle. But I think that it's important for us to be open to one another and show each other how to grow when we can see what someone else is lacking, as opposed to ridiculing them and tearing them down and making yourself feel as though you're more superior to somebody that looks like you, because it doesn't make sense, especially when the world is treating us so poorly everywhere. So we just got to make sure we grow each other and love on one another.
Yeah,
Right.
I was going to go in here with my final thoughts on this real fast, which in essence, I was looking at this and we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I believe that, and also there was something I was mentioned in that interview earlier that we didn't get a chance to get to, the opinion of Freeway Rick Ross, which basically stated that towards the end was we do need to be able to be more conscious and more mindful in the way that we in our dealings. I think, one of the biggest things that I noticed, like I said, when I got a chance to go to Dubai, was the unity and the love that they have for their people. The country is open up to anybody to come do business. We don't care where you're from. We're not taxing you that much. We're looking to come in and give you an opportunity to happen here. We want you to come to the economy and build up, but you will never be a citizen, but you will never get the rights of the citizens here unless you were, born of you and a descendant and ideally a male, that or born from a male of this country primarily. So that was one of the biggest things that I kind of noticed when it came to um being over there, realizing how the country was able to stay so stable, how it was able to continue to grow, and not only also of the resources that they had, but just also protecting, their citizens. And I think that that's something that goes with us having a community, and us being able to value just the having love and respect for each other. One of the other things, so I think the separation thing is something that we definitely should be mindful of, and like to Malik's point that we made earlier, also being able to have the advantages that were initially set out for us to be used by us. So that's something that also needs to occur. Real quickly, I wanted to go into our motivational minute, which is also going to segue into something to a little later. This was a quote that I have from a book, which is also going to be our.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I thought Malik had his final thought.
Did you didn't already go yet, Malik?
I was gonna say something after you finished. You was on the
Oh,
roll with your go.
go ahead. Yeah, no problem. Go ahead. I'll wait.
Yeah. I was just gonna just real quick. I was just gonna say, like you were saying, what Ross was pretty much saying was, Black people, we need to be on code, especially here at Foundational Black Americans, and that can help eliminate a lot of this stuff. So when we see immigrants, especially immigrants that are of African descent or African immigrants, we gotta specifically call that out because you'll think they're your brothers, but their ideology is more akin to, a white supremacist or somebody who's trying to destabilize what we're trying to build here to achieve our agenda, right? And better our community. So I think by being on code, trying to do what's best for you and your community, which is Foundational Black Americans, I think that's the way to go and to combat some of this, friction that we have. So when they do such a things, such as this gentleman did with who a former employee of Pace University, we call that out and we get them to uh, recognize the incident and disassociate themselves from that individual and call that out on those comments, disparaging remarks, because we're not going to tolerate that stuff, even if it comes from African immigrants nowadays. So that's all I wanted to say. Go ahead.
Oh, yep, no problem. So the quote that I'm going to use is a quote from the book Limitless: The Thousand Shot Theory. And this is a book by Lil Russell, who is also the owner of the Black Business of the Month, which is Good Company. They are a nonprofit based company out of Oakland, or excuse me, Vallejo, California. Um, Super dope guy, is another artist. as far as musicians. So check them out on YouTube or whatever streaming services is. And as far as for the motivational minute, the quote that, or excuse me, the story that I want to read is, it's not free, it's priceless. Value is infinite. When I decided to do a donation-based shows, I was fully prepared to lose money. What I gained was insight and value. Some people donate $1, others donate hundreds. Value is infinite. It's always based on who's determining it, how they perceive you, and the nature of their experience. Once I figured that out, it became very difficult for me to set a price on anything. Everything we do is priceless. Who am I to tell someone what their experience is worth? I focus on providing the best experience possible. I give my best and provide people with the experience that I would want for myself. And ultimately, I think that's the thing that I want this conversation to bring about, is that all within the diaspora, all we need to do is look at each other and say, listen, what's the experience that we want to have? What's the likelihood that we're looking to have? And if we can do that and respectfully understand how each people are trying to get there, and allow people to have their room, like Malik said, give room and space for African Americans, or descendants, ADOS, whatever you want to refer to as, to have the things that are supposed to be done for corporate America or white America to actually enact on those things, and to continue to be diligent in providing the services that are supposed to be used for, the civil rights purposes, and not to just be used as other ways for other communities to get in and have majority of the access to these things. I think that'll definitely help us be able to have more of a community feel, more of an understanding what it's like. But as long as we're always, having our foots on each other's neck, as long as we're always feeling like the only way for me to feel good is to talk down on someone else, or for me to differentiate myself is to try to speak down on another culture, we're going to continuously have these issues. So that's what I want to leave us with. Also, you guys can catch us on our social medias, which will be posted here momentarily. You can also find us on Wednesday nights at around 8:30 We Go Live on Instagram. Appreciate all of the love and support. And hope you guys were able to have some good conversation or some good dialogue from this. And as a reminder, our Black Business of the Month is, again, Good Company, which is a nonprofit out of Vallejo. They also are the producers of the Limitless book, as well as Larissa.
Thanks for that, E. And once again, you can check us out. We'll be back at it again this Wednesday, 8:30. We have a good topic lined up that we kind of want to discuss with y'all. So check that out on our Instagram page, Counterpoints Podcast, which will be on the outro screen.
Also, lastly, if you guys have any topics that you want us to discuss, please feel free to reach out to us. You can email us, you can DM us, all that stuff, because we are on all social media platforms. So reach out to us, let us know. We enjoy you guys' input. And also, too, we like when y'all interact with us. So with that being said, y'all be safe out there, and stay diligent and love on one another. And also be kind to each other, because you never know what the next person is going through. With that being said, we out of here.
All right.